Hey guys, it's Marshall Mathers the fourth here. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about the fact that I personally wish, in my opinion, that all of Eminem's albums that he has released throughout his entire rap career would have all been released earlier and as well as have been longer. And I also want to mention that this will be, honest to God, the very last video that I ever do on this topic or subject that has to do with and revolves around Eminem himself. And so, obviously, I know a lot of you are bored with these videos and really annoyed with them, and I get and understand that they're repetitive, and I do repeat myself a lot in these videos, but, I do want to apologize because I probably should have made this video instead of just making so many videos as to when I personally wish and also strongly believe that all of Eminem's rap albums that he has released throughout his entire rap career should have been released, at least in my opinion. But this will be kind of slightly a different video because it will pretty much be a video of when Eminem should have released his rap albums, considering with when he was officially signed to Dr. Dre's Aftermath record label company, which was on March 9, 1998, when he was 25 years old, and at the time Dr. Dre was 33. And since it took Eminem until the age of 25 years old to release his Slim Shady EP, unfortunately, and age 25 to get even signed in the first place, and it took him until age 26 years old to release his first mainstream major label debut hip-hop rap album, the Slim Shady LP. But since I already pretty much made a video about that before this video, in this video I'm going to pretty much start with his Marshall Mathers LP album. And when it comes to when I really wish and strongly believe that he should have released that album of his, I honestly think it should have came out in the month of March, still on the 23rd and in the year 2000, and when he would have been still the same age that he was at when he did release that album of his, which was 27 years old. But the reason as to why I wish and also strongly believe that he should have released his Marshall Mathers LP album on exactly and specifically March 23 in the year 2000 instead of May 23, so just 2 months earlier, really not that big of a difference, but it would still have been a slight difference, and there's no denying that fact. And there's really only a couple reasons as to why I not only really wish and strongly believe that album of his should have came out in the month of March in the year 2000. First of all, and the main reason being, if you all remember in his song Criminal, he raps the verse, "You can't stop me from topping these charts, and you can't stop me from dropping each March. A brand new album for these fucking retards." And you know what was interesting about that verse or that line that he raps in that song of his, which is a dope-ass fucking song from that incredible album of his original plan, in case none of you know yet, his original plan, if he would not have got on such an extreme, severe drug addiction and problem back when he was a lot younger and in his youth and his early on rap career, he would have released a rap album every single March. That was his original plan. And, I find that extremely interesting. And, even if he would have been able to do that, personally, in my opinion, I would not have wanted him to do that. But it would have been highly interesting to see just how different his rap career would have looked and would have been if he would have been able to do exactly that. If he would have been able to do his original plan, which again was supposed to release a rap album for every March. And I assume starting with his Marshall Mathers LP album, because after all, why would he have rapped that verse or that line in that song of his if he didn't even originally intend to release his Marshall Mathers LP album in the month of March? And that brings me to another reason as to why I feel that album of his should have came out in the month of March in the year 2000, but still on the same day, same year, and at the same age, is because when I look at the cover of his Marshall Mathers LP album, and this is just my opinion and point of view, you can all have your own opinions and your own feelings that you're completely entitled to, just as I am to mine. But when I look at that album cover of his, the tone of it, the vibe, the atmosphere, the feeling that it gives to me, at least, is a rap album that just would have felt way more right and would have made way more logical sense to have came out in the month of March. And I'm fucking pissed that it didn't, because also the color alone too just feels to me like a rap album that would have just been perfect to have came out in the month of March rather than in the month of May, which is the month that album of his was actually released, unfortunately, in the reality of things. And, you know, like I said, the main reason I'm pissed that he didn't release at least that album of his in the month of March is because, again, he raps in his song Criminal from his Marshall Mathers LP album. You can't stop me from topping these charts. You can't stop me from dropping each March a brand new album for these fucking retards. And so that's why I believe that album of his should have came out in the month of March. But also, it probably originally was intended to come out that month, and for whatever bullshit-ass reason, it didn't, unfortunately. But that's not the only thing that I really wish would have been different about that album of his. I also really wish that on the song Amityville, which is featuring Bizarre from the rap group D12, which is a dope-ass fucking song, to say the least, the original version of it was also going to include Young Z and Pace One. And, you know, it breaks my heart that they were not on that song, because what happened with that song, which is just really tragic, and I'm about to tell you all the backstory of the original song. So Dr. Dre said to Eminem at the time, you know, you have too many rap features on this song. And so he pretty much told Eminem, cut their verses or delete them or whatever. Not necessarily start the whole song over, I'm sure, but just completely and entirely remove those two artists from that song Amityville. And, you know, it just pisses me the fuck off because, first of all, if those two rappers, or those two artists, in other words, would have been on Eminem's song Amityville, as well as Bizarre and, of course, and obviously Eminem, that song would have been probably, if anything, a lot longer than it actually was, which definitely would have made it better because, again, that's an amazing, awesome song from his Marshall Mathers LP album. And those two rappers are really dope fucking lyricists. So, in my opinion and point of view, they really deserved to have a spot on that song of his. And originally they did. But all because of Dr. Dre's dumbass, he told Eminem, you have too many features on that song, and I want you to cut them. I want you to delete them from that song. Delete them, delete their verses, or whatever he said. And I'm just like, I'm enraged and frustrated at Dr. Dre for saying that to Eminem at the time because, you know, the song Bitch Please 2, also on Eminem's Marshall Mathers LP album, had a lot of fucking features. Like, first of all, it had Dr. Dre, Nate Dogg, Snoop Dogg, Xzibit, and Eminem. And all those, that's 5 artists in just one track, one song. 5. I mean, that's a lot. If I'm going to be honest here, I mean, 5 rappers, 5 artists just on one song. I mean, I feel that's never really been done before. And that's a lot of fucking rappers to just have on just one song. And I mean, if you think about it, You'll agree with me on that fact. You'll agree with me there. And, you know, if he would have had Young Z and Pace One from the forgotten about Eminem rap group, The Outsiders, that Eminem was rarely and barely a part of when he was an up-and-coming rapper trying to make it into the rap game, of course, and obviously. He used to be a part of a rap group that went by the name The Outsiders. And, you know, if he would have had Young Z and Pace One on that song as he originally intended to, and if Dr. Dre wouldn't have been a stupid piece of shit and told Eminem that he has way too many features on that song and to, like, delete them or cut their verses out or whatever, that would have only been 4 artists or 4 rappers on that song Amityville from Eminem's Marshall Mathers LP album. I mean, literally. Because you would have had Eminem, Bizarre, Young Z, and Pace One. That's only 4 rappers. Whereas on the song Bitch Please 2, there's 5 rappers or 5 artists, in other words, on that song. So I just don't see or understand why Dr. Dre thought, oh, you have too many artists or too many rappers on this song. It's just ridiculous. And I am so very pissed at Dr. Dre for telling Eminem that. And, you know, I'm also really fucking pissed that Eminem didn't release the 2 unreleased Marshall Mathers LP songs, being Mom and especially and most of all Dear Ronnie, which were both officially confirmed by Eminem's rap manager Paul Rosenberg before he even released that album of his. And, you know, I honestly don't know why he didn't put or release the song, the unreleased Marshall Mathers LP song Mom, on his Marshall Mathers LP album, which would have also included a skit, which would have made me furious, because then that would have made and added 5 skits to his Marshall Mathers LP album from the year 2000. So what I think would have been much smarter and better if Eminem would have even released that song on his album, which he definitely should have done, is combined the Mom skit with the Mom song so that they could have just been one track, and then have also and definitely release the unreleased Marshall Mathers LP song Dear Ronnie, which I am extremely pissed and just furious as hell that Eminem did not release and put on his Marshall Mathers LP album, which would have then brought that album of his to a track listing of 20 tracks, but also would have had a total of 16 rap songs and just 4 skits, which is what would have been my personal dream come true version of his Marshall Mathers LP album in the year 2000. And, you know, it's really heartbreaking, unfortunate, but also interesting about the backstory of Eminem's unreleased Marshall Mathers LP song Dear Ronnie, why he didn't put that song on that album of his, because what happened was Ronnie's family told Eminem that they didn't want him to release that song on his album because it had an audio recording of both Ronnie and Eminem when they were like teenagers, either rapping or freestyling. And then, of course, there would have actually been the song where Eminem would have been rapping about his uncle Ronnie, who he was also really close and like good friends with for, I'm sure, a very long time in his life. And it's interesting too, because Ronnie was also the guy who was Eminem's uncle, by the way, who got Eminem, being his nephew, into rap music in the first place. Ronnie introduced Eminem to rap when Eminem himself was only 14 years old. And also, Ronnie and Eminem were the same exact age. And Ronnie, unfortunately, committed suicide in the year 1990 when he would have been like 17, 18 years old. And Eminem was really devastated and just heartbroken and emotionally and mentally torn apart. So when he released his Marshall Mathers LP album, Eminem obviously, and of course, which I feel only makes perfect sense, he wanted to make a tribute song to his uncle Ronnie. He wanted to make a song dedicated to him, to pay honor to him and to pay homage to him. but all because of Ronnie's bitch-ass family, who told Eminem, you know, we don't want you to release this song on your Marshall Mathers LP album because we don't want the public to hear like an audio of Ronnie rapping or freestyling or whatever. And we don't think it's respectful for you to rap about him and how he took his life and all the events that like led up to it. And he took his life because a girl didn't want him. And, you know, what breaks my heart and just makes me furious as hell and just pisses me the fuck off is the fact that Eminem was also a part of Ronnie's family. I mean, after all, Eminem was his damn nephew. And what I find ridiculous is even though Eminem may have not been like his brother, like one of his siblings, that doesn't make Eminem any less part of Ronnie's family than Ronnie's siblings or Ronnie's parents or whatever, or cousins or some shit like that. And, you know, if I would have been Eminem at the time, I would have been absolutely outraged. And I would have told Ronnie's family straight up, like, you know, I can't believe you're telling me this because I already made the song. And that's the point. Like, Eminem had already made the song and had it ready to go. And that means he had to pay for studio time, pay for the beat, and pay for the time that he would have obviously and of course recorded his verses or lyrics for that song, and also of course and obviously wrote the hook for that song also. And I would have been very interested and intrigued and excited to have heard what exactly that song would have sounded like. What would the beat have been? What would the hook have been? What exactly would Eminem himself have rapped in that song about Ronnie, which again would have been called entitled Dear Ronnie? And yet we'll never know, and it will probably never see the light of day. And ever since the year 2000, it has just been rotting away in his studio. Not literally, but figuratively. And, you know, it just crushes me that Eminem's Marshall Mathers LP album could have technically been longer, which it definitely should have been, but also, you know, like, especially when it came to that song, most of all, I mean, that's one of, if anything, like the biggest unreleased what if songs that Eminem did not release on his Marshall Mathers LP album. But anyways, like, if I would have been Eminem, I mean, I literally, and I'm not even kidding when I say this, if I would have been Eminem myself in the year 2000, I would have straight up told Ronnie's family, like, look, I'm his family too. I'm a part of his family just as much as you all are. I was his nephew. We were like the best of friends. We were super close. And it was Ronnie who got me into rap music in the first place when I was just 14 years old. And if it would not have been for Ronnie, you know, Eminem would have probably not have gotten into rap music, or at least there would have been less likely of a chance of that actually happening. So that's what I would have told Ronnie's family. And I would have also said, like, you know, if you want to sue me for releasing this song, go ahead, give it your best shot, try and see what happens, because most likely what would have happened is they would have sued him and he would have probably had to give him some money, but probably not that much, I'd at least imagine, because Eminem would have had way more lawyers, way more people on his side, way more money too. So it's like Ronnie's family would not have had that much of a good shot or chance at getting that much money from Eminem. And I mean, after all, so many other people in his family sued the shit out of him and barely got shit. Or nothing at all. So it's like, I don't see why Eminem didn't just be like, you know, fuck it. Go ahead and sue me. I mean, it's not like the first time I've gotten sued, and it certainly won't be the last. And you know what I also definitely wish when it came to Eminem's Marshall Mathers LP album is the fact that he would have released a deluxe edition to that album of his. And for the deluxe edition of his Marshall Mathers LP album, have chosen the album cover where he's sitting on the doorstep of his childhood home in Detroit, Michigan, which is one of the alternative album covers to his Marshall Mathers LP album, which would have been an epic album cover for a deluxe edition version of that album of his. And the opening song and track that I would have wanted to have been released on his Marshall Mathers LP album to have been Our House featuring Fred Durst. And, you know, that would have been a just perfect, excellent song to have released on a deluxe edition of that album of his, because one of the covers of Eminem's Marshall Mathers LP album, again, is the one where he's sitting on the doorstep of his childhood home in Detroit, Michigan. So what better way than to have had the opening song for the deluxe edition version of that album of his have been the song Our House featuring Fred Durst, which is one of the scrapped throwaway Marshall Mathers LP Eminem songs that sadly did not make it on that album of his, which just makes me furious as hell and pisses me the fuck off. And then track 2, I would have wanted to have been the unreleased Marshall Mathers LP song Violence. And last but not least, for track 3 for the deluxe edition of Eminem's Marshall Mathers LP album, to have been Angry Blonde, which is another unreleased Marshall Mathers LP song. And it would have been such a perfect, excellent closing song and track for a deluxe edition of Eminem's Marshall Mathers LP album, which he most definitely and absolutely should have made and released, because that would have only been very generous, considerate, and thoughtful of him to have done for all of his fans, and especially stans. And then, so after that album, 10 months later, on January 14 in the year 2001, when he would have been 28 years old, and also considering with when he did become famous and release his albums, but I wish his first Slim Shady LP album would have came out at the very latest on November 13, 1998, and no later than that. And the version of it that I really wish he would have released and strongly believe he should have, his Marshall Mathers LP album, the version of it that I wish he released on March 23, 2000 instead of May 23, 2000. I also wish his Marshall Mathers LP album would have had 4 music videos, because after all, his Slim Shady LP album had 4 music videos, so it would have only been equal and fair to have had the same amount of music videos for his Marshall Mathers LP album. But anyways, continuing on, and before releasing his Marshall Mathers LP album on July 19, 1999, I really wish that 8 months after releasing his Slim Shady LP album, Eminem and D12 would have released their debut album, Devil's Night. But I just wanted to throw that out there really quick. But anyways, moving forward, on January 14 in the year 2001, at the age of 28 years old, while he would have still been in his 20s and in his early on rap career when he would have been in his youth, I really wish and do strongly believe, which would have been 10 months after releasing his Marshall Mathers LP album, that Eminem would have released a Slim Shady LP2 album on exactly and specifically January 14 in the year 2001 at the age of 28 years old. And I'm sorry that I repeated myself there and I said it again. I do apologize. But, you know, if Eminem was going to ever release a Slim Shady LP2 album, if anything, he definitely and of course and obviously should have released it not only while he would have still been in his 20s, but also in his early on rap career when he was young and in his youth and in the prime of his rap career, and while he would have, if anything, still been a drug addict, because those albums only work with when he was in and at that time period in his life. And so I would have wanted his Slim Shady LP2 album to have had a track listing of 20 tracks. 4 of them have been skits, but no more than that, just 4. And then 16 of those tracks to have been actually songs, and only 4 of them have been skits, but no more than that. and then a 3-track deluxe edition. So in total, or a grand total, to have had his Slim Shady LP2 album have been 19 songs long as a grand total, with both the standard edition and deluxe edition combined to have been a grand total of 19. Same with his Marshall Mathers LP album. And anyways, for the Slim Shady LP2 album, I would have wanted like the cover to have been the funky like purplish pinkish color, and definitely have had a moon, obviously, and of course. And as for the album cover photo, maybe something like I don't know, Eminem in front of a haunted house with like a dead woman in the trunk of his car, or in front of a church, but parked in front of a church somewhere in the UK, maybe, possibly, and like in front of a cemetery. That would have been pretty dope and eerie and chilling for a Slim Shady LP2 album cover, I feel, at least. Something like that. And for the deluxe edition to have just been a closer up image with like larger photo and picture of the moon to be symbolic of and implying that it's the deluxe edition of his Slim Shady LP2 album. And obviously have a close-up of the car and the dead woman in the trunk, and a close-up of Eminem himself, who would have been 28 years old at the time. And so either take the photo shoot in front of a, say, like haunted house somewhere in the UK, or in front of a eerie looking church and in front of like a cemetery or something, and then have a moon, obviously, in a funky purplish pinkish color. And then for the deluxe edition to have a larger photo of the moon on the cover and close-up of Eminem, the car, and the dead woman in the trunk. Something like that. And for the standard edition of his Slim Shady LP2 album to have had all new songs, obviously, and of course, 16, that is, which would have been a lot, and especially more than just a lousy, lame, pathetic, pitiful, worthless amount of 14 songs and only 4 skits, hell, maybe even just 3. So he could have maybe even had 17 songs, either 4 or 3 skits, and, probably 4. He would have probably done 4. Have 4 music videos, and on his Slim Shady LP2 album have obviously features like D12, The Outsiders, Dr. Dre, and probably, if anything, like other rappers that he collaborated with when he was an underground up-and-coming rapper trying to make it into the rap game. So give them more attention and focus, like rappers that he himself collaborated with when he was an underground rapper. Because he collaborated with a lot of underground rappers, and it would have been very generous, thoughtful, and considerate of him to have given them a spot on his Slim Shady LP2 album. And also probably like maybe and hopefully an Aaliyah feature would have been dope. A Redman and Method Man feature, maybe a Nas feature, maybe perhaps Jay-Z, Missy Elliott perhaps, like some old school rappers, DMX, shit like that. That would have been just really incredible. And then for the deluxe edition of his Slim Shady LP2 album, have had 3 extra songs. And, maybe have included some of the unreleased Marshall Mathers LP songs, like the Tylenol Island Freestyle, the Jimmy Bryan and Mike song, and the Let Us Live unreleased Marshall Mathers LP song for a deluxe edition of his Slim Shady LP2 album. Maybe. If he wanted to put those unreleased 3 songs or tracks on his Slim Shady LP2 album, that would have been nice. If not, I mean, of course, and obviously just new ones instead then. So that's what I wish would have happened with regards to a Slim Shady LP2 album. And then I wish that on June 17 in the year 2001, 5 months after his Slim Shady LP2 album, at the age of still 28 years old, on June 17, that Eminem would have released his 8 Mile movie soundtrack album that I wished would have been 18 to 20 tracks long, no skits or interludes. And I really wish that his 8 Mile movie soundtrack album would have actually have been like a solo Eminem album, like a actual album LP, like almost, if anything, like an 8 Mile LP album, but not literally, but in a sort of way, because after all, it's a soundtrack to the movie about his life previous to fame, prior to fame. And I'm so very pissed and furious as hell that Eminem gave away most of his movie soundtrack album to rappers that had nothing to do with him, did not even know he existed, and did not help him become a famous rapper, and also became famous way younger than he ever did, which makes me so damn mad and just angry and hateful. And so on his 8 Mile movie soundtrack album, you know, his song Rap Game, instead of featuring 50 Cent on the hook, it should have featured Obi Trice. Also, that song should have definitely included and had a music video to it. And also the song Rabbit Run should have also had and included a music video, so that his song Lose Yourself, his extremely and severely overrated song Lose Yourself, would not have been the only song and track on his 8 Mile movie soundtrack album that would have had a music video. The song Rap Game deserved to have had a music video made and included for it, as well as Rabbit Run. And, you know, on his 8 Mile movie soundtrack album, he should have had songs with just himself, D12, Obi Trice, Royce da 5'9", and The Outsiders. He should have limited his 8 Mile movie soundtrack album to just those artists and have like 18 songs, maybe 20 at the most. And, you know, that would have just been an absolute dream come true. And I wish that his 8 Mile movie would have came out on like June 21 in the year 2001, when he would have only been 28, and that there would have been like a 30-minute extra director's cut of his 8 Mile movie, which would have been awesome. And then when it came to his Eminem Show album, I really wish that album of his would have came out and have been released on February 15 in the year 2002, when he would have been only 29 years old, same year that he released that album of his, and even at the same age. But instead of releasing it when he actually did, which was on May 26 in the year 2002, which pisses me the fuck off, I feel and believe, wish, and would have much rather preferred Eminem to have released his Eminem Show album on February 15 in the year 2002, which would have been 3 months and 11 days earlier than when he actually did release that album of his. And I also really wish that he would have included a 3-track deluxe edition, with the opening track being the song Stimulate, then Can I Bitch, and close out with Nail in the Coffin, or Stimulate and some other 2 songs, something like that for a deluxe edition of his Eminem Show album, which he definitely should have released, which would have been very thoughtful, generous, and considerate of him to all his fans, and especially stans. And, you know, this is what this video means as to when I say that all of Eminem's rap albums should have came out and have been released earlier, and also they all should have had an included deluxe editions and have been longer. both standard edition wise and also included and had deluxe editions, especially for his earlier on rap albums. And of course, and obviously, he should have released more rap albums in his youth, which is an all-around fact that should have definitely happened, and I'm pissed the fuck off that it didn't. Like releasing a Slim Shady LP2 album on January 14 in the year 2001 when he would have only been 28 years old, and then his Eminem Show album on February 15, 2002. So that his Eminem Show album could have instead of been his fourth rap album instead of only being his third, and his fourth rap album released when he would have been in his 20s, which would have been so amazing and just epic. And I'm so pissed that it didn't happen like that. And anyways, I then wish that Eminem would have released his encore album on exactly and specifically April 8 in the year 2003, when he would have been only 30 years old. That is the exact day, month, and especially most of all, year that I really wish and strongly believe that Eminem should have released his encore album. And also, not only a year earlier than he actually did release it, but also 2 years younger in age, because I don't think he should have been any older than 30 years old when he released that fucking album of his. I also wish that he would have released the earlier version of his encore album cover, like the unmastered sequence version of his encore album cover. Like, there's a version of his encore album cover that has that's like gray and black, which looks really dope, and it makes it look even more old and classic than it actually is. And it has his arms holding a gun. Well, the gun is on the table, and then he's like putting bullets into the gun. There's a glass of water or alcohol, if anything. There's also an old, like, early 2000s cell phone, and Eminem is writing a note, and he's saying something like, I forgot what it said, but something like, to my fans, I'm Sar Marshall. Like, he was about to write sorry, but he just wrote Sar Marshall. And, you know, if you look up the cover, and, you know, I'm going to put the link to the album cover in the bottom of this video, and I'm going to pin the comment to the top. So I really highly suggest you all look at it. And, you know, it really reminds me of Kendrick Lamar's 2011 debut album, Section 80 album cover. And so I'm just so very pissed that Eminem did not choose to put that as his encore album cover, which would have been, without a doubt, a way better and greater album cover than the lousy, lame, pathetic, pitiful encore album cover he went with instead, unfortunately. And, you know, I also really wish he should have released his encore album when he would have been 30 in 2003, because that was the last and final year in age that he was considered to be in the prime of his rap career. So why wouldn't he have wanted or tried to have released his encore album while he would have still been in the prime of his rap career, and only 30 rather than 32? And, you know, also, I wish that album of his would have been older and therefore more classic, which would have been so awesome and amazing. And it would have been so awesome and amazing if it would have came out within a year after releasing the Eminem Show, which would have been an absolute flat-out dream come true. And I also wish that he would not have released the 3 shitty, awful, garbage, terrible, horrible songs of Puke, Rain Man, and Big Weenie, and would have instead replaced those songs with Bully, which originally was supposed to be on his encore album, Real 911 featuring Booyah Tribe, and last but not least, Eminem's version of the song Hail Mary featuring 50 Cent and Busta Rhymes after getting like the rights to that Tupac song, that is, which would have been awesome if he would have been able to like get the rights to that song and release that song instead of Big Weenie, which definitely would have been a way better and greater song. And you know, I also kind of wish that Eminem would have had like a really long version of Encore, like a 29 track listing, or a 29 long track listing of his Encore album, because it would have been his 5th album. And what I mean by that is when Tupac released his 5th album in 1996 when he was 24 years old, which was All Eyes on Me. His All Eyes on Me album not only was his 5th rap album, but it also had a track listing of 29 tracks. That's a fuck ton. And so it would have been really awesome if Eminem would have released a 29 long track listing for his Encore album, which I really wish would have been his 5th album. Not his 4th, but his 5th. But if not, fine. Whatever. But and then after releasing his Encore album, which should have been on April 8 in the year 2003 when he would have been only 30 years old, and released the different, well, earlier on original version of his Encore album cover, which he definitely should have went with instead, which pisses me off that he didn't. 8 months later, which would have been in December of 2003, when he would have been 31 years old, release D12's 2nd album, which I would have wanted to have been a Devil's Night 2 album rather than a D12 World album. And I would have wanted it to have been produced by Eminem, just like the first one was. And then I wish that Eminem would have released his greatest hits album, and rather than being titled Curtain Call The Hits, I would have much rather preferred Eminem to have released a greatest hits album entitled Shady Hits, or The Shady Hits. Either Shady Hits or The Shady Hits. Something like that. And have had something like water with a yellowish moon rising from the water with stars in the sky and a purplish sky with clouds or whatever. And the yellow moon would imply the Slim Shady era, of course, and obviously, because Slim Shady era has his blonde hair or whatever. So the yellow moon would imply that. And I honestly kind of wish that he would have made Yellow Moons for his Slim Shady LP album. Well, album, since I wish he would have released 2, and actually 3 in all. But that will come later on in this video. But anyways, I think either Shady Hits or The Shady Hits would have been a way better and greater and just much cooler greatest hits album name for a greatest hits album. And that's just my personal opinion and point of view. And obviously self-released the new songs like Fact, Shake That, and When I'm Gone. And I wish he would have released that on December 6, 2004, when he would have been only 32. So on the same month and day, he released it, but 1 whole year earlier than he actually did release it. And being a whole year younger in age, instead of being 33, being only 32 years old, which would have been so much better and greater. And, you know, I honestly also wish that in January of 2005, which would have probably, if anything, been the year that Eminem's best friend Big Proof would have been murdered. And the reason I say that is because when Eminem released his song and music video Like Toy Soldiers, which was in 2004, Big Proof was murdered just 2 years later in 2006. So I can't help but wonder if Eminem would have released his encore album a whole year earlier in 2003, if Big Proof would have probably been killed in 2005 instead, so a year earlier, if that would have changed the events of history, which it most likely would have. I mean, there's definitely a much higher chance of that happening if that would have been the case, if that would have been the reality of things. But, you know, when Big Proof died, I think it was in like March or April or something of 2006. So if it would have happened a year earlier, but like in January of 2005, I really wish that Eminem would have tried to have released one more D12 album, even if it would have came out the year Big Proof would have been murdered, but like a certain amount of months before, like 3 or 4 months before Big Proof would have been killed. And also, Big Proof's album would have came out earlier. His Searching for Jerry Garcia album, instead of coming out in 2005, would have came out instead in 2004. And then also, on December 5, 2005, the same month and day it came out, but a year earlier, instead of coming out in 2006 when he would have been 34 years old, I really wish that Eminem would have released his Re-Up compilation album on December 5, 2005, when he would have been only 33. So a whole year younger in age, but still on the same month and day, but a year earlier. And then also, I wish that Eminem would have released his Relapse album on January 1 in the year 2008 at the age of just 35 years old, which I feel would have probably happened if Eminem's hiatus would have like happened earlier. And even if he would not have released a third D12 album, I mean, whatever, that would not have been that big of a deal. But the reason why I also wish Eminem's encore album would have came out in the year 2003, so that he would have came back in 2008 rather than 2009 at the age of 36. Because 2008 is the year that I really wish, and also do strongly believe, his Relapse album should have came out and have been released. Because, you know, to me, and in my opinion, his Relapse album feels way more like a rap album that would have just made much more logical sense, and it felt more right to have came out in the year of 2008 rather than the year it came out in 2009. And also, in my personal opinion, Eminem should have only been 35 years old when he released that album of his, rather than and instead of 36. And I wish it would have came out on January 1, 2008, and no later than that. And, you know, I'm just so pissed, so very pissed and furious as hell that his Relapse album did not get released on January 1, 2008, when he would have been only 35 years old. And then if this would have happened, and if his encore album would have been his 5th album instead of only being his 4th, his Relapse album would have been his 6th album, which would have been awesome. I also wish his Relapse album would have been longer, but just one extra song longer. His I'm Having a Relapse freestyle, I wish would have been included on the deluxe edition of his Relapse album. So I'm Having a Relapse freestyle, as well as Underground, and of course and obviously Careful What You Wish For. And you know, if Eminem's Relapse album had came out on January 1 in the year 2008, when he would have been only 35 years old, that would have just been so much better and greater. And his Relapse album would have been even older and therefore more classic. And guess what? He would have been younger in age, a whole year younger in age. And also, most likely what would have also probably happened and have been the case is one of his Relapse songs would have probably been featured in the Grand Theft Auto 4 video game that would have came out in April of 2008. And even though I never had and got to play that video game growing up as a kid, just like I was deprived and underprivileged of and missed out on many life experiences when I was growing up as a kid, I still would have thought it would have been cool if Eminem's Relapse song 3 AM would have been in the video game GTA 4 or Grand Theft Auto 4. And then 10 months later, on November 13 in the year 2008, at the age of 36 years old, I wish that Eminem would have released his unreleased, canceled, scrapped, throwaway Relapse 2 album. And then obviously Relapse 2, a deluxe edition of Relapse 2, and also a Relapse 2 refill album, all released on the same month, day, and year. So on November 13, 2008, at the age of just 36 years old, is the month, day, and especially year that I really wish more than anything Eminem would have released his unfortunately canceled, unreleased, scrapped, throwaway hip-hop rap album, Relapse 2, which he most definitely and absolutely, without a doubt, should have released. And released both, obviously, like a standard edition, deluxe edition, and a Relapse 2 refill album. Like a Relapse refill, but with Relapse 2 refill. And then also, I wish that Eminem and Royce da 5'9" would have released their Bad Meets Evil Hell, the sequel album, in July of 2009, 8 months after releasing his Relapse 2 album, Relapse 2 plus the deluxe edition of Relapse 2 and Relapse 2 refill. And then in July of 2009, Eminem and Royce da 5'9" release, of course and obviously, Bad Meets Evil Hell, the sequel, both standard and deluxe edition. And, you know, that would have been such an epic, amazing, awesome album to have made and released in the last year of the 2000s decade, generation, and era, and would have been just an epic way to kind of end and finish the 2000s decade off on. It would have been a dream come true, at least to me anyways. And then I wish that Eminem would have released his recovery album 7 months after releasing Bad Meets Evil Hell, the sequel, on February 18 in the year 2010 at the age of 37, same year and age that he released his recovery album, and even same day, but 4 months earlier. 4 months earlier. And, but again, it's still at the same age and still on the same day and even same year, but 4 months earlier. And I also really wish that Eminem would have released the song, the scrap throwaway recovery Eminem songs like Fly Away featuring Just Blaze. Also, I really wish he would have released the song Eminem featuring D12 Fame or Going Crazy, which would have been such a perfect, excellent song to have had and included on his recovery album, as well as, and of course, the solo version of his song, That's All She Wrote. The solo version would have been a perfect, excellent song of just Eminem's version of that song on his recovery album. Instead of the songs So Bad, On Fire, and Riders, which were 3 Relapse 2 albums that were brought over to his recovery album. But if he had made and released his Relapse 2 album, which he definitely should have released it because he already made it, and he should have released it on November 13, 2008 at the age of 36, a standard edition, deluxe edition, and of course and obviously a Relapse 2 refill album for like some of the remainder Relapse 2 songs. And so in place of where the song So Bad, On Fire, and Riders would have been on his recovery album for the song So Bad, having said Fly Away featuring Just Blaze. Instead of the song On Fire, have Eminem featuring D12 Going Crazy or Fame or Going Crazy, which would have been a perfect, excellent Eminem and D12 song to have ended their relationship on, which would have been a dream come true, because it would have definitely been a perfect, excellent song to have ended their rap group on, I feel. And if it would have been released on Eminem's recovery album, well, that would have been a flat-out dream come true. And then in place where the song Riders would have been, have Eminem, That's All She Wrote solo version, and have it have been titled Solo Version. And then 5 months later, in July of 2010, Eminem have released the Southpaw movie soundtrack album on well, first of all, on July 20, Eminem have actually been in the Southpaw movie and not have turned it down, which he definitely should not have done. And then on July 24, released the Southpaw movie soundtrack album, which should have only featured Dre, 50 Cent, maybe Obi Trice, maybe The Outsiders, Busta Rhymes, Lil Wayne, Nicki Minaj, perhaps, Nas, maybe, like rappers like that, for example, but have Eminem have been on every single one of the songs instead of giving it mostly away. And then on March 11 in the year 2011, at the age of 38 years old, I really wish and strongly believe that Eminem should have released his Slim Shady LP3 album and have had like 3 or 4 skits, 16 or 17 songs for the standard edition of his Slim Shady LP3 album, and then of course and obviously a 3-track deluxe edition, and release that album at the age of 38 years old, while he would have still been in his 30s and still somewhat young, and have had his blonde hair again. And that album had been released before the Marshall Mathers LP2 album. And again, that album had been released in March of 2011 at the age of just 38 years old, and have rap features like The Outsiders, Obi Trice, Dre, 50 Cent, Lil Wayne, perhaps Kanye West and Jay-Z, Kid Cudi, J. Cole, and have his Slim Shady LP3 album have been fully produced by Dr. Dre, which would have been so great and just so out of this world. Because Eminem literally does sound the best when rapping over Dr. Dre produced rap beats. And then in let's see. And then in November of 2011, when Eminem would have been 39 years old, 8 months after releasing his Slim Shady LP3 album on March 11 in the year 2011 at the age of just 38 years old, I wish that Eminem, of course and obviously, would have helped Slaughterhouse release their debut album called Welcome to Our House in November of 2011. And then I wish that Eminem would have released his Marshall Mathers LP2 album then on October 23 in the year 2012, when he would have been 40 years old. Considering with when he did become famous, and since he has a Kendrick Lamar feature on his Marshall Mathers LP2 album called Love Game, but Kendrick Lamar released his, not debut, but second album called Good Kid, Mad City in October of 2012 as well. So both Eminem and Kendrick could have both had an album that could have came out in October of 2012, which would have been pretty dope. And it would have also been awesome if Kendrick Lamar would have had Eminem with a feature on his Good Kid, Mad City album. And he really should have. You know, Kendrick Lamar really missed out on that chance and opportunity to get Eminem as a feature on at least one song on that album of his. And then Eminem could have had Kendrick Lamar on his Marshall Mathers LP2 album, so that way there could have been already 2 Eminem and Kendrick Lamar features, which would have been really amazing. And it's just so unfortunate that didn't happen. But, you know, I wish that his Marshall Mathers LP2 album would have been a lot longer, as in been a track listing of 20 tracks long, had more of the songs been produced by Dr. Dre, because none of them actually were, and actually had more rap features, like a Bitch Please 3 song and a 3-track deluxe edition. Like, it would have been dope to have had a Dr. Dre and 50 Cent feature on his Marshall Mathers LP2 album. Another dope feature would have been Yellow Wolf feature, which would have been a dream come true. Kanye West and Jay-Z feature would have been dope. A Busta Rhymes feature would have been dope. A Kid Cudi, a J. Cole feature would have been dope. Something like that. Like, more rap-based album instead of mostly pop and R&B features. And then in July of 2013, well, also in like December 2012, November, December 2012, I wish Eminem would have been in the movie Elysium that he turned down, which he definitely should not have turned down. But then anyways, moving forward, in July of 2013, at the age of 40, 9 months after releasing his Marshall Mathers LP2 album, I really wish that, well, I almost forgot. On Eminem's Marshall Mathers LP2 album, for the song Bad Guy, it should have featured Dido, just like the Stan song and music video. And it should have had Dido as a ghost. And it should have had the kid who actually played Matthew Mitchell in the Stan music video, who would have been 18 years old at this time in late 2012. Anyways, I also wish the song Don't Front featuring Buckshot would have been on his Marshall Mathers LP2 album. But anyways, so on in the month of July in the year 2013, when Eminem would have been 40 years old, that Eminem and Royce da 5'9" would have released their second Bad Meets Evil album, or third, or whatever. And Eminem would have had his blonde hair this time. And have, like, rap features on the second Bad Meets Evil album, which would have been a dream come true. And then release his Shady 15 compilation album to celebrate the 15th year anniversary of Shady Records, to have been released in like April or May of 2014, when he would have been 41 years old. So like April 24, May 24, like 9 or 10 months after releasing the third Bad Meets Evil album, which definitely should have came out in July of 2013, and there's no denying that fact. And, you know, his Shady 15 compilation album, if anything, should have had better produced beats for the newer songs, that is. And then in 2015, Slaughterhouse should have released their second album, which sadly and unfortunately got canceled, but it was going to be titled and called Glass House. And it would have been amazing and awesome if they would have actually got to release it, even if it would have been only one more. And then, and that have been released in 2015, when Eminem himself would have been 42 years old, or during the time he would have been 42, I mean. And then Eminem should have released his Revival album on September 10 in the year 2017, when he would have been only 44 years old, and no later. He should have also included the unreleased song Revival, featuring Alice Lamech, who died of leukemia in 2015. And she was really excited to make that song for Eminem, so he should have honored her wish and made that song as a tribute and homage to her by actually releasing it. And then also, he should have definitely had a 3-track deluxe edition for that album of his. And then he should have released his Kamikaze Surprise album on May 25 in the year 2018, when he would have been only 45, which should have been the only rap album that he would have released at 45, because he should have released Revival at 44, not 45. He should not have released Revival on December 15, 2017. He should have released it on September 10, 2017, and no later. And then he should have released his Kamikaze album on May 25 in the year 2018 at the age of 45. And he should have had a lot more features, like his song Greatest should have been produced by like Madlib or Ninth Wonder. His song Fall should have had either The Weeknd or the singer Miguel on the hook, and Eminem should have used the word faggot in the song when dissing Tyler, the Creator, and not have been a bitch and censored it. He should have also had like Mac Miller, XXXTentacion. He should have had JID, J. Cole, Kendrick Lamar, Conway, Benny the Butcher, Big Sean, Dej Loaf, Kid Cudi, maybe or perhaps Dr. Dre and 50 Cent on his Kamikaze album. Like, he should have had a lot more features. He should have had a track listing of 20 tracks for his Kamikaze album, as well as, and of course, and obviously, a 3-track deluxe edition. And there's no denying that. Not for a second. And I'm just so pissed that it didn't happen that way. And but yeah, that's what I wish as when it comes to his Kamikaze album. And you know, I kind of would have loved it if the song Nice Guy would have featured Lana Del Rey rather than having 2 songs with Jesse Reyes. I would have liked it if Nice Guy would have featured Lana Del Rey. But anyways, I wish then in March of 2019, when Eminem would have been 46 years old, that he and Royce the 5'9" would have released their 4th Bad Meets Evil album. That would have been a dream come true. And then, of course, and obviously, his Music to Be Murdered By albums, same month, day, and year he released them. Side A on January 17, 2020, and then Side B on December 18, 2020, at age 48. And then I wish that in like August 21 of 2021, when he would have still been 48 years old, that Eminem would have released a Relapse 3 album to have ended and finished the Relapse album trilogy at the age of 48 years old, while he would have still been in his 40s. And then I wish that he would have released maybe, say, a Marshall Mathers LP3 album or like a retirement album this year in like in June of this year, June 2022, at the age of 49 years old, release his last retirement album at age 49. Like maybe a Marshall Mathers LP3 album or Revelation with a backwards Z or something like that would have just been dope. But sadly, none of that happened. None of this happened. And it's just heartbreaking it didn't. But let me know what you all think in the comment section down below. I'm out.